The rain falls in thick sheets over Chicago, turning the streets into rivers of reflected neon light. Elena Carter stands beneath the awning of a closed bakery, her single suitcase at her feet, her coat soaked through to the skin. She is 32 years old, and everything she once believed about her life has crumbled in the span of 72 hours. 3 days ago, she had a home. She had a husband of 8 years. She had a teaching position at a private school on the North Side. She had routines, grocery lists, Sunday dinners with her mother-in-law. She had the quiet architecture of a life she thought was permanent. Then she found the messages on David's phone. Not just one woman, but 3. Years of deception woven through anniversaries and holidays, through every moment she thought was real. When she confronted him, his response was not remorse, but rage. He told her to leave. He told her the apartment was in his name. He told her she had 24 hours to collect her things before he changed the locks. Her mother passed away 2 years ago. Her father lives in a care facility in Ohio, his mind lost to dementia. Her only brother moved to Australia a decade ago, and their relationship exists now only in occasional birthday texts. Eleanor has friends, but not the kind you call at midnight when your world collapses, not the kind who offer spare rooms and indefinite stays. She spent the first night in a motel near O'Hare, counting the money in her checking account, calculating how long she could survive. The second night she drove to the school where she taught, only to find a security guard waiting with a cardboard box of her belongings. Budget cuts, they said. Position eliminated. The timing was coincidental, they assured her, but the principal could not meet her eyes. Now it is the third night, and Eleanor has exhausted her options. The motel wanted payment in advance. Her credit card was declined. Her checking account shows a balance of $47. Her phone battery is at 12%, and there is no one left to call. She watches a black sedan glide through the intersection, its headlights cutting through the storm. The city moves around her like a machine that has no use for broken parts. People hurry past with umbrellas, not seeing her, not wanting to see her. She is invisible in the way that only the desperate can be. Elena picks up her suitcase and begins to walk. She does not know where she is going. She only knows that standing still feels like surrender, and she is not ready to surrender. Not yet. The neighborhood changes as she walks. The storefronts become smaller, older. The streetlights grow farther apart. She passes a laundromat with steamed windows, a corner store with bars on its door, a church with a sign that promises salvation in English and Spanish. The rain does not stop. It seems to intensify, as if the sky itself is trying to wash her away. She turns down an alley, seeking shelter beneath a fire. Escape. The metal stairs provide minimal protection, but it is better than nothing. She sets down her suitcase and leans against the brick wall, closing her eyes. Her teeth chatter. Her fingers have gone numb. This is how Elena Carter arrives at the lowest point of her life. Not with drama or spectacle, but with the quiet accumulation of losses that strip away everything she thought she knew about herself. She does not know how long she stands there. Time becomes meaningless when there is nothing to measure it against. Minutes or hours pass in a blur of cold and exhaustion. The rain continues its relentless assault on the city. Then she hears the voices. They come from deeper in the alley, where the shadows are thickest. Male voices, low and urgent. She catches fragments of conversation, words that make no sense to her tired mind. Something about a shipment, something about a problem that needs to be solved. Elena presses herself against the wall, making herself as small as possible. She knows instinctively that she should not be here, should not be hearing this, but there is nowhere to go. The alley has only one exit, and it is behind the men. A flashlight beam sweeps across the ground, approaching her position. She holds her breath. The beam passes over her suitcase, then rises to illuminate her face. She squints against the brightness, raising her hand to shield her eyes. The voices stop. Footsteps approach. Heavy, deliberate. A man emerges from the darkness, his face still hidden behind the glare of the flashlight. He is tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark coat that seems to absorb the rain. Behind him, Elena can make out the shapes of 2 other men. They stand motionless, watching, waiting for a signal she cannot interpret. The man with the flashlight lowers the beam slightly, allowing Elena to see his face. He appears to be in his early 40s, with dark hair silvered at the temples and features that suggest Mediterranean ancestry. His eyes are the color of storm clouds, and they study her with an intensity that makes her feel both seen and exposed. He does not speak immediately. He takes in her soaked clothes, her battered suitcase, the way she presses herself against the wall like a cornered animal. Something shifts in his expression, though Elena cannot name what it is. When he finally speaks, his voice is low and measured. There is authority in it, the kind that comes not from volume but from absolute certainty. "What are you doing here?" Elena's throat constricts. She cannot find words. She opens her mouth, but nothing comes out except a sound that might be a sob or might be a laugh. She cannot tell the difference anymore. The man turns to one of his companions and says something too quiet for her to hear. The other man nods and disappears into the shadows. Then the first man returns his attention to Elena. "You look like you need help," he says. It is not a question. Elena finally finds her voice. It comes out, cracked and raw. "I'm fine, I was trying to get out of the rain." The man's expression does not change. "You're shivering so hard I can hear your teeth from here. You're not fine." She wants to argue, to maintain some dignity, but her body betrays her. A violent shiver runs through her and she nearly loses her balance. The man steps forward and catches her arm, steadying her with a grip that is firm, but not painful. "My name is Marco Valenti," he says, "and you're coming with me." It is not a request. Elena understands this immediately, but in this moment, standing in a dark alley in a city that has abandoned her, she cannot summon the energy to resist. She has no phone battery, no money, no options. She is alone in the most complete sense of the word. Marco Valenti releases her arm and picks up her suitcase as if it weighs nothing. He gestures toward the mouth of the alley, where Elena can now see a black SUV waiting with its engine running. She walks beside him through the rain, too exhausted to ask questions, too defeated to care about the answers. The other men fall into step behind them, silent as shadows. The SUV is warm inside, almost painfully so after the cold. Elena sinks into the leather seat and feels her muscles begin to unclench. Marco Valenti sits beside her, his presence filling the space without crowding it. The driver does not speak or turn around. He simply pulls away from the curb and begins navigating through the storm-drenched streets. Elena watches the city slide past the tinted windows. She should be afraid. She knows this. She has gotten into a car with a stranger, a man who is conducting mysterious business in a dark alley, a man whose very presence suggests power and danger. But fear requires energy she no longer possesses. All she feels is a strange, hollow calm. "Where are we going?" she asks. Marco Valenti does not look at her. His eyes remain fixed on the rain-streaked window. "Somewhere safe," he says. The SUV turns onto Lakeshore Drive, heading north. The lake appears on their right, a vast darkness punctuated by the distant lights of boats. Lightning flickers on the horizon, illuminating clouds that look like mountains. Elena leans her head against the cool glass and closes her eyes. She tells herself she will rest for just a moment, just until they arrive wherever they are going. She tells herself she will figure out what to do next, how to escape this situation, how to rebuild her life. But exhaustion is stronger than intention. Within minutes she is asleep. She does not see Marco Valenti turn to look at her. She does not see the way his expression softens almost imperceptibly as he studies her face in the passing streetlights. She does not hear him speak quietly into his phone, giving instructions in Italian, arranging for things she cannot imagine. Elena Carter sleeps, and the city continues its endless motion around her, indifferent to her fate. When she wakes, everything has changed. The first thing Elena notices is the light. It is soft and golden, filtering through curtains that look like they cost more than her monthly rent. She is lying in a bed that feels like a cloud, covered by sheets so smooth they might be made of water. She sits up slowly, her body protesting the movement. Every muscle aches from her night in the rain. But she is dry now, she realizes. She is wearing clothes that are not her own, a simple grey sweater and loose cotton pants that fit her perfectly. The room around her is enormous. High ceilings with ornate mouldings, hardwood floors partially covered by an antique rug, a fireplace with a marble mantel, currently unlit, windows that stretch from floor to ceiling, revealing a grey morning sky. Elena's suitcase sits at the foot of the bed, unopened. She swings her legs over the side of the mattress and stands carefully, testing her balance. Her reflection appears in a mirror across the room, and she barely recognizes herself. Her hair is tangled, her face pale, dark circles under her eyes. She looks like someone who has survived a shipwreck. A knock at the door makes her jump. "Come in," she says, her voice still rough from sleep. The door opens to reveal a woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She carries a tray with a steaming cup and what appears to be toast. "Good morning," the woman says. Her accent is Italian, softened by years of American living. "Mr. Valenti asked me to bring you breakfast. He thought you might be hungry." Elena's stomach growls as if on cue. She cannot remember the last time she ate. The woman sets the tray on a small table near the window. "My name is Rosa. I manage the household. If you need anything at all, you only have to ask." "Where am I?" Elena asks. Rosa's expression remains neutral. "You are in Mr. Valenti's home, in the Lincoln Park neighborhood." Lincoln Park. Elena knows the area. Old money, historic mansions, the kind of neighborhood where politicians and executives raise their children behind iron gates. "How long have I been asleep?" "About 14 hours. Mr. Valenti said to let you rest as long as you needed." 14 hours. Elena cannot remember the last time she slept for 14 hours. Perhaps never. Rosa moves toward the door, then pauses. "When you're ready, Mr. Valenti would like to speak with you. He's in the library downstairs. Take your time." Then she is gone, and Elena is alone with her questions. She eats the toast and drinks the tea, which is perfect, exactly the right temperature, exactly the right amount of honey. She opens her suitcase and finds her own clothes, wrinkled but dry. She changes into jeans and a blouse, brushes her hair with trembling fingers, tries to make herself look like someone who has not lost everything. The hallway outside her room is long and lined with artwork. Elena does not know enough about art to identify the pieces, but they look expensive. Everything in this house looks expensive. The rugs, the chandeliers, the flowers arranged in crystal vases on antique tables. She finds the staircase and descends slowly, taking in the grandeur around her. The foyer is larger than her entire apartment. A grandfather clock ticks in the corner, marking time that suddenly feels significant. The library door is open. Marco Valenti sits in a leather armchair near the window, a book in his hands. Morning light falls across his face, softening the severity of his features. He looks up as Elena approaches, and something in his expression shifts. Recognition, perhaps, or assessment. "Please," he says, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Sit." Elena sits. She does not know what else to do. Marco sets down his book. It is a collection of poetry, she notices. Not what she expected. "How are you feeling?" he asks. "Confused," Elena admits. "Grateful. Confused about being grateful." The corner of his mouth twitches. It might be amusement. "That's honest." "I don't understand what's happening," Elena says. "Why did you help me? Why did you bring me here?" Marco Valenti leans back in his chair. He is silent for a long moment, studying her with those storm-colored eyes. "I'm going to tell you something," he says finally, "and I want you to listen carefully before you respond." Elena nods. "I am not a good man by most definitions of the word. I run businesses that exist in the spaces between what is legal and what is necessary. I have enemies who would hurt anyone associated with me. I make decisions that most people would find morally complicated." He pauses, letting the words settle. "But I saw you standing in that alley, and I recognize something. The look of someone who has been abandoned by every system that was supposed to protect them. I know that look because I wore it once, a long time ago." Elena feels her throat tighten. I'm not asking for anything in return, Marco continues. I'm offering you a place to stay while you figure out your next move. No strings attached, no expectations. Just a roof over your head and food in your stomach until you're back on your feet. Why? Elena asks. The word comes out as a whisper. Marco Valenti stands and walks to the window. He looks out at the garden below where rain from the previous night still glistens on the leaves, because power means nothing if you don't use it to help those who have none. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel. If stories that touch your heart and remind you that hope exists even in the darkest moments matter to you, then you belong here. Subscribe now and join thousands of others who believe in the transformative power of storytelling. 3 weeks pass in the Valenti mansion, and Elena begins to understand the rhythm of the household. Rosa manages everything with quiet efficiency, from the meals that appear at precise intervals to the fresh flowers that seem to replace themselves overnight. There are other staff members too, people who nod politely when Elena passes them in the hallways, but never engage in conversation. Marco himself is rarely home during the day. He leaves early in the morning, always impeccably dressed, always accompanied by men who look like they could handle any situation. He returns in the evenings, sometimes for dinner, sometimes later. When he is home, he often finds Elena in the library, where she has taken to spending her afternoons. They develop a routine without explicitly agreeing to one. Dinner at 7, when his schedule permits. Conversation that ranges from books to politics to childhood memories, shared hesitantly at first, then with increasing ease. He tells her about growing up in a neighborhood not far from where he found her, about a father who worked 2 jobs and still died in debt, about a mother who taught him that dignity has nothing to do with money. Elena tells him about teaching, about the way a child's face lights up when understanding finally clicks. She tells him about her marriage, about the slow erosion of connection that she mistook for stability. She does not tell him everything. Some wounds are still too fresh. One evening, Marco arrives home with a small girl clinging to his hand. Elena is in the foyer, having just returned from a walk around the garden. She stops short at the sight. The girl is perhaps 5 years old, with dark curls and enormous brown eyes. She looks up at Elena with the cautious curiosity of a child who has learned not to trust strangers. Marco's expression is unreadable. Elena, this is Sophia, my daughter. Elena's surprise must show on her face because Marco's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Her mother passed away 2 years ago, he says quietly. Sophia lives with me part-time. She's been staying with her grandmother while I dealt with some business matters. Sophia does not speak. She simply watches Elena with those large, observant eyes. Elena kneels down to the girl's level. Hello, Sophia. I'm Elena. I'm staying here for a little while. Sophia considers this information. Then she looks up at her father. Is she nice? Marco's face softens in a way Elena has never seen. Yes, Piccola. She's nice. The presence of Sophia changes the dynamics of the household in ways Elena did not anticipate. The mansion, which had felt like a beautiful museum, suddenly becomes alive with the sounds of a child, laughter echoing in the hallways, small footsteps on the stairs, demands for pancakes shaped like animals. Elena finds herself drawn into Sophia's orbit. She helps with homework when Marco is away. She reads bedtime stories, doing all the voices even when Sophia giggles and says she sounds silly. She discovers that Sophia loves butterflies, that she is afraid of thunderstorms, that she still cries sometimes for a mother she barely remembers. One rainy afternoon, Elena and Sophia are in the kitchen, making cookies. Rosa has provided all the ingredients and then tactfully disappeared, leaving them alone, with flour and chocolate chips and the particular joy of making a mess together. Sophia stands on a step stool, her small hands covered in dough. My daddy says you were sad when he found you. Elena pauses in her mixing. Yes, I was very sad. Are you still sad? The question is simple, as children's questions often are, and like most simple questions, it requires a complicated answer. Sometimes, Elena says honestly, but less than before. Sophia nods sagely. That's good. Daddy says sad gets smaller if you let people help. Elena feels something shift in her chest. Your daddy is very smart. I know. Sophia returns her attention to the cookies. He's the smartest person in the whole world. Except maybe you. Elena laughs, and the sound surprises her. It has been so long since she laughed that she had almost forgotten how. When Marco comes home that evening, he finds them in the sitting room, Sophia asleep on the couch with her head in Elena's lap. Elena is reading by lamplight, one, hand absently stroking the child's hair. He stands in the doorway for a long moment, just watching. She wore herself out with the cookies, Elena says softly, not looking up from her book. She never warms up to people this quickly, Marco says. There is something in his voice that Elena cannot identify. Wonder, perhaps, or something deeper. Children know things, Elena says. They sense who is safe. Marco crosses the room and lifts his daughter gently, cradling her against his chest. Sophia stirs but does not wake. Thank you, he says, for being kind to her. Elena meets his eyes. She makes it easy. Something passes between them in that moment, something unspoken but significant. Then Marco turns and carries his daughter upstairs, and Elena is left alone with her thoughts. The following weeks bring changes that Elena tries not to analyze too closely. Marco begins coming home earlier. He finds excuses to spend time in whatever room she occupies. Their conversations grow longer, more personal. He tells her about his work in terms that are vague but honest. Import and export, he says, investments, problem-solving for people who have complicated problems. She does not ask for details. She is not sure she wants to know, but she is also not naive. She sees the men who guard the gates. She notices the way people defer to Marco, the way his phone calls are handled with urgency, the way certain topics make the household staff go quiet. She understands that the man who saved her from a dark alley is not simply a businessman with a nice library. One evening she finds him in his study, surrounded by papers. His face is drawn, exhausted. He looks up when she enters, and for a moment his guard drops entirely. Rough day? She asks. Rough decade, he replies. Then he gestures to the chair across from his desk. Sit with me. Tell me about something ordinary, something that doesn't involve numbers or negotiations or people who want things I can't give them. Elena sits. She tells him about the book she has been reading, a novel about a woman who discovers her grandmother's secret past. She tells him about Sophia's new obsession with learning to braid hair. She tells him about the cardinal she saw in the garden, how it sat on the birdbath for almost 20 minutes just looking around like it owned the place. Marco listens. He does not interrupt, does not check his phone, does not look at the papers on his desk. He simply listens, and Elena realizes that this might be the most intimate thing that has happened between them. When she finishes, he says, "You have a gift for making small things feel significant." I was a teacher, she reminds him. Finding meaning in small things was literally my job. No, he says. It's more than that. You see the world differently than most people. You notice what others overlook. Elena feels warmth spread through her chest. You notice things too. You notice me in that alley. You were hard to miss. I was. Soaking wet and probably looked half dead. Marco's expression shifts into something almost tender. You looked like someone who deserved better than what life had given her. The moment stretches. Elena becomes acutely aware of the space between them, of the way the lamplight catches the silver in his hair, of the sound of her own heartbeat. Then Marco looks away, back at the papers on his desk. It's late. You should get some rest. Elena stands. She knows a dismissal when she hears one, but at the door she pauses. Marco? He looks up. Thank you for letting me stay, for giving me time to figure things out. His expression is unreadable. You can stay as long as you need, Elena, as long as you want. She nods and leaves, but his words echo in her mind long after she has climbed into her impossibly comfortable bed. As long as she wants. The phrase carries weight she is not sure how to measure. Days turn into weeks. Weeks begin to suggest months. Elena starts to build something that resembles a life within the walls of the Valenti mansion. She helps Rosa with household planning. She becomes Sophia's unofficial tutor in subjects that her expensive private school does not adequately cover. She reads her way through the library, discussing each book with Marco during their evening conversations. She also begins to venture outside the mansion, always with a driver, always with the discreet protection of men who never speak but are clearly watching. She visits museums. She walks along the lakefront. She applies for teaching positions at schools throughout the city, updating her resume, writing cover letters, pretending that she has a normal life with a normal address. But she always returns to the mansion, to the routine, to Sophia's laughter and Rosa's cooking and Marco's presence, which has become as essential to her days as breathing. She does not examine this too closely. She is not ready. One morning, Eleanor is helping Sophia with a puzzle in the sunroom when the doorbell rings. It is an unusual sound in this house, where visitors are either expected and admitted through the gate or not expected and never admitted at all. Rosa appears in the doorway, her face carefully neutral. "Miss Carter, there is someone here to see you." Elena's stomach drops. She sets down the puzzle piece she was holding and follows Rosa to the foyer. David stands just inside the door, looking out of place in his wrinkled khakis and golf shirt. He appears older than Elena, remembers, somehow diminished. Behind him, through the open door, Elena can see the iron gates of the mansion and the guards who allowed him entry. "Elena." His voice is the same, confident, entitled. "We need to talk." Elena feels her body go rigid. The sight of David in this space, this sanctuary she has built over the past weeks, feels like a violation. He does not belong here. He belongs to a life she has been trying to escape. "How did you find me?" Her voice is steadier than she expected. David looks around the foyer, taking in the artwork, the crystal chandelier, the obvious wealth surrounding him. "You're not exactly hiding. One of my colleagues saw you coming out of a restaurant downtown. I did some digging." Elena does not respond. She is acutely aware of Sophia in the sunroom, of Rosa hovering in the background, of the guards who are certainly watching and reporting. "We need to talk," David says again. "Privately. We have nothing to talk about." "Elena." He steps closer, lowering his voice. "I made a mistake. I know that now. I've had time to think, and I realize how badly I handled everything. I want you to come home." The words hang in the air between them. Home. As if the apartment where he brought other women during their marriage, the apartment from which he evicted her with 24 hours' notice, could ever be home again. "That's not going to happen," Elena says. David's expression hardens. "Who is he? The man who owns this place? What have you gotten? Are yourself into? That's none of your business. You're still my wife. Not for long." Eleanor's voice rises slightly. "I've already contacted a lawyer. The papers should be arriving any day now." Something shifts in David's eyes. The mask of contrition slips, revealing the anger beneath. "You think you can just walk away after everything I've done for you?" Elena almost laughs. Almost. "What exactly have you done for me, David, besides lie to me for years?" "I gave you a life, a home, stability, and you repay me by shacking up with some—" "That's enough!" The voice comes from behind Elena. Marco stands at the top of the staircase, dressed in a dark suit, his expression completely unreadable. He descends slowly, each step deliberate, and Elena watches David's confidence visibly deflate. Marco stops beside Elena. He does not touch her, but his presence forms a barrier between her and her husband. "I believe the lady asked you to leave," Marco says. His voice is soft, almost pleasant. It is the most dangerous sound Elena has ever heard. David puffs up slightly, the way small men do when confronted by larger threats. "This is between me and my wife. Miss Carter is a guest in my home. That makes her welfare my concern." Marco pauses. "I'm going to give you 10 seconds to walk out that door. After that, my hospitality will be significantly reduced." The two men stare at each other. Eleanor holds her breath. Finally, David looks away. He points a finger at Elena. "This isn't over. You'll hear from my lawyers." He turns and stalks out the door, which closes behind him with a soft click. Elena releases a breath she did not realize she was holding. Her hands are shaking. Marco turns to her. "Are you all right?" She nods, then shakes her head, then laughs in a way that is not quite stable. "I don't know. Yes. No. I think so." Marco's hand rises as if to touch her shoulder, then drops back to his side. "Come. Sit down. Rosa will bring you some tea." He guides her to the sitting room, where she sinks into the cushions of the sofa she has come to think of as her own. Rosa appears with tea, then disappears with the discretion that defines her service. "I'm sorry," Eleanor says. "I didn't mean to bring my problems into your house." Marco sits across from her. "Elena, listen to me. You have done nothing wrong. That man had no right to come here, and he will not be permitted entry again. He'll make trouble. He's vindictive like that. Let him try." There is something in Marco's voice that makes Elena look up. His eyes are hard. "I have resources for dealing with vindictive men." Elena should be frightened by this. Some part of her recognizes the implicit threat beneath his words. But instead, she feels something else entirely. She feels safe. "Thank you," she whispers. Marco nods once. Then he rises. "I have meetings this afternoon, but I want you to stay inside today, just as a precaution." "What kind of precaution?" He pauses at the door. "The kind that ensures your ex-husband understands that coming here was a serious mistake." Then he is gone, and Elena is left alone with her cold tea and her racing thoughts. If you've been following this story, and you feel even a fraction of what Elena is feeling right now, if you understand what it means to find safety after years of feeling lost, then leave a comment below saying, "Everyone deserves to be protected." Let me know you're here. Let me know this story matters to you. Your comment means more than you know. The afternoon passes in a haze. Elena tries to read but cannot focus. She attempts to help Sophia with homework, but finds her mind wandering. She paces the length of the library, the sitting room, the hallway, unable to settle anywhere for long. When Marco returns that evening, he finds her in the garden, standing beneath the ancient oak tree that dominates the backyard. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "You're still awake," he says, approaching her. "I couldn't sleep. It's barely 7 o'clock." Elena smiles slightly. "I meant earlier. I tried to nap. It didn't work." Marco stops beside her, close enough that she can smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive. He looks up at the sky. "I spoke with some people today," he says, "about your ex-husband." Eleanor's heart rate accelerates. "What did you find out?" "He's in debt. Significant debt. His law firm is struggling. The affairs you discovered were partly with women. He was trying to impress for business reasons." Marco pauses. "He didn't want you back because he loves you. He wanted you back because your teaching salary was helping to cover his minimum payments." Elena absorbs this information. It should hurt more than it does. Perhaps she has already processed so much pain that there is no room left for additional disappointment. So he's desperate. Desperate men do desperate things. Marco turns to face her. "I've arranged for additional security around the property. I've also made it clear to certain contacts that David Carter is not to be trusted with business dealings in this city. His reputation will suffer accordingly." "You didn't have to do that." "No, but I wanted to." Eleanor meets his eyes. In the fading light, they look less like storm clouds and more like silver. "Why?" she asks. "Why do you care so much about what happens to me?" Marco is silent for a long moment. When he speaks, his voice is rougher than usual. "Because you make my daughter laugh. Because you see me as a person, not a position. Because you walked into my world broken and somehow made it feel more whole." Eleanor's breath catches. "Because," Marco continues, taking a step closer. For the first time in years, I come home looking forward to something other than silence and obligation. He raises his hand and brushes a strand of hair from her face. His touch is gentle, almost hesitant, as if he is afraid she might break. I know what I am, he says softly. I know the life I lead is not simple or safe, but when I'm with you, I want to be better. I want to be the man you see when you look at me. Elena does not know who moves first. Perhaps they move together, like magnets finally allowed to touch. His lips meet hers and the world narrows to this single point of contact. The kiss is tender and searching. It asks questions that words cannot frame. It offers answers that transcend language. When they finally separate, Elena's eyes are wet. I'm scared, she whispers, of all of this, of how much I feel. Marco cups her face in his hands. You don't have to be scared. Not with me. Never with me. Behind them, the last light of sunset fades into darkness. Above them, the first stars begin to appear. And in this garden, in this moment, something new begins. The weeks that follow are a revelation. Elena and Marco do not hide their growing relationship from the household, though they also do not advertise it. Rosa simply adjusts meal. Preparations for two. Sophia begins asking if Elena can tuck her in alongside her father. The rhythm of the house shifts to accommodate this new configuration. Elena moves from the guest room to the master suite. It happens gradually, organically. First, a nightgown left on a chair, then a toothbrush beside the sink, then waking one morning to realize she cannot remember the last time she slept alone. She learns the topography of Marco's life, the late-night phone calls that he takes in his study, with the door closed, the men who come and go at odd hours, the tension that sometimes appears in his shoulders and jaw, evidence of conflicts she is not permitted to understand. She does not ask questions. She has learned that some silences are protective, that knowing less can sometimes be a form of safety. But she pays attention. She notices patterns. She files away information without being fully conscious of doing so. She also begins the process of rebuilding her external life. Her divorce. Papers arrive and she signs them without hesitation. She receives responses to her job applications and goes to interviews, always with a driver, always with the quiet awareness that she is being watched. She opens a new bank account in her name alone and begins to accumulate savings. Marco never asks about her plans. He never suggests that she should stay indefinitely or implies that her financial independence threatens him. He simply supports her efforts, celebrating each interview, consoling each rejection, treating her ambitions as equal to his own. One evening, Elena receives a call that changes everything. She is in the library when her phone rings. The number is unfamiliar, but she answers anyway. Miss Carter, this is Detective Susan Marsh, Chicago Police Department. We need to talk about your ex-husband. Elena's heart begins to race. What about him? There is a pause. When the detective speaks again, her voice is carefully neutral. Mr. Carter was found earlier today. He's alive, but he's been hurt. He's claiming that you and an associate are responsible. The world tilts. Elena grips the arm of her chair to steady herself. That's not possible. I haven't seen him since he came to the house weeks ago. What house, Miss Carter? Where are you currently residing? Elena hesitates. I'm staying with a friend. I'm going to need that friend's name and address, and I'm going to need you to come to the station tomorrow morning for questioning. The conversation continues, but Elena barely registers the words. When she finally hangs up, her hands are trembling. She finds Marco in his study. His expression shifts immediately when he sees her face. What happened? Elena tells him. She watches his features harden into something cold and dangerous. I didn't do this, he says. I want you to know that. I made calls. I applied pressure. But I didn't order anyone to touch him. Then who did? Marco's jaw tightens. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. The next morning, Elena goes to the police station. She is questioned for 3 hours, asked the same questions in different configurations, shown photographs that make her stomach turn. David was found in an alley, not unlike the one where Marco found her. He had been beaten, Not critically, but severely. She answers every question honestly. She explains her living situation without providing specific details. She describes her last interaction with David, witnesses by Marco and Rosa, and the household guards. Detective Marsh studies her with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Miss Carter, do you know a man named Marco Valenti?" Eleanor's heart stops. "He's my friend. I'm staying at his home." "Are you aware that Mr. Valenti has been investigated multiple times for connections to organized criminal activity?" "I know that he's a businessman with complicated dealings. I don't ask about the details." "That's convenient." Elena meets the detective's gaze steadily. "Detective, I didn't hurt my ex-husband. I didn't ask anyone to hurt him. I've been trying to remove myself from his life, not engage with it." After 3 hours, she is released. No charges are filed. But Elena leaves the station with a cold weight in her chest. When she returns to the mansion, Marco is waiting. He pulls her into his arms the moment she walks through the door. "I'm sorry," he murmurs against her hair. "I'm sorry you had to go through that." "They know about you," Eleanor says. "They mentioned your name. Your investigations." Marco pulls back to look at her. "I've been investigated before. It's part of this life. Nothing has ever stuck because I'm careful." "Were you careful about David?" His expression flickers. "I made some calls, asked some questions, made it known that he should leave you alone, but I swear to you, Elena, I did not order what happened to him." Elena searches his face for deception and finds none, but she also realizes that in his world there are layers of distance between intention and action. He might not have given the order, but someone who works for him might have interpreted his wishes and acted accordingly. She does not know how to feel about this. "I need some time," she says, "to think." Marco nods. His face is carved from stone, but his eyes betray something that might be fear. "Take all the time you need, I'll be here." Eleanor retreats to the guest room, not the master suite. Not now. She needs space that is entirely her own. She lies on the bed and stares at the ceiling, trying to untangle the threads of her life. She came here broken, and Marco helped her heal. She fell in love with his kindness, his intelligence, his devotion to his daughter. She allowed herself to believe that she could belong in his world, but his world has shadows she cannot ignore. His world has violence that operates by rules she does not understand. His world might have reached out and harmed her ex-husband, regardless of whether Marco himself gave the order. Does that matter? Does the distinction between action and influence carry moral weight? Elena does not know. She only knows that she needs answers before she can decide what happens next. 3 days pass. Elena spends them in a state of suspended animation, present in the household but separate from it. She eats meals with Sophia, maintaining normalcy for the child's sake. She nods politely to Rosa and the staff. But she avoids Marco, and he respects her distance. On the 4th day, she makes a decision. She finds him in the garden, standing beneath the oak tree where they first kissed. He looks up at her approach, and she sees the hope and fear warring in his expression. "I need to know everything," she says, "not details about your operations, not names or specifics that would put me in danger. But I need to understand what happened with David. All of it." Marco nods slowly. "All right. Sit with me." They settle on the stone bench beneath the tree. The morning sun filters through the leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow on the ground. "When you told me about your ex-husband," Marco begins, "I was angry, not because of any personal slight, but because I recognized the type of man he is, the kind who takes without giving, the kind who uses people and discards them when they're no longer useful." Eleanor listens without interrupting. "I made some calls to business contacts, people who move in circles that overlap with his law firm. I let it be known that David Carter was not to be trusted, that his financial problems made him unreliable. Within a week, 2 of his major clients had transferred their business elsewhere." "That's financial pressure," Elena says. "That's not violence." Marco's expression darkens. "No, it's not. But one of the people I spoke with was a man named Vincent Russo. He runs certain operations on the south side. We're not enemies, but we're not friends either. We tolerate each other's existence. What does he have to do with David? Vincent has a daughter. A few years ago, she was married to a man very much like your ex-husband, a man who hurt her in ways that took years to heal. Marco pauses. When Vincent heard me mention David's name, he asked questions. I answered them without thinking about the implications. I told him David was harassing you, that he'd come to my home uninvited, that he refused to respect boundaries. Eleanor begins to understand. And Vincent took matters into his own hands. Not directly, but he has people who have people. A chain of connections where intention becomes action without explicit orders. Marco meets her eyes. I didn't ask for David to be hurt. I wouldn't have wanted that, but I created the conditions that made it possible. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to be honest. Eleanor processes this. The truth is complicated, as she suspected. Marco did not wield the weapon, but he set events in motion. He is responsible without being directly culpable. Will there be consequences, she asks, for Vincent, for his people? Vincent has already made restitution. He knows I'm displeased that my name might be connected to this incident. He's agreed to ensure that his people are more careful in the future. Marco pauses. In our world, that's significant. Your world? Elena repeats. I'm still not sure I belong in it. Marco reaches for her hand. She lets him take it. I understand if you need to leave, he says. I would never force you to stay in a life that frightens you. But I want you to know that everything I've done, every call I made, was because I wanted to protect you. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Elena looks at their joined hands. His fingers are strong, capable of violence, yet gentle when they touch her. He is a man of contradictions. But perhaps everyone is. I don't know what happens next, she admits. I don't know if I can live with this forever. But I know that walking away right now, without giving us a chance, would be a decision I'd regret. Marco's grip tightens. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm not leaving. Not yet. I'm saying I want to try to find a path forward together, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. Elena meets his eyes. Promise me that you'll always tell me the truth, even when it's difficult, even when you think I don't want to hear it. I can handle hard truths. What I can't handle is discovering that the man I love has been hiding things from me. Marco raises her hand to his lips and kisses her knuckles. I promise, he says. No more shadows between us. They sit together beneath the oak tree as the morning light strengthens around them. Nothing is resolved, nothing is simple, but they have chosen each other, and for now that is enough. The weeks that follow are a process of rebuilding. Elena resumes her job search and eventually secures a position at a charter school on the west side. She will teach 5th grade, shaping young minds doing the work she was always meant to do. She also begins to integrate more fully into Marco's life. She meets his associates, the men and women who operate in his complicated ecosystem. She attends dinners where business is discussed in coded language. She learns to read the silences, to understand when to excuse herself and when to stay. Sophia remains the center of their domestic world. The child thrives with Elena's consistent presence, her tantrums decreasing, her confidence growing. She starts calling Elena Mom one morning at breakfast, then immediately looks terrified at her own audacity. Elena cries. Marco pretends he has something in his eye. They don't make a big deal of it, but everything shifts. The investigation into David's assault eventually stalls. He cannot identify his attackers, and his claims about Elena's involvement collapse under scrutiny. He moves away from Chicago 6 months later, taking his debts and failures to another city where he can start fresh. Elena does not wish him well, but she doesn't wish him harm either. She simply hopes never to see him again. On the anniversary of the night Marco found her in the alley, he takes her back to that neighborhood. The same street, the same corner, the same awning where she once stood soaked and hopeless. Do you remember what I said when I first saw you? He asks. Eleanor shakes her head. I said you looked like you needed help. Marco takes her hands. What I should have said was that you looked like the answer to a question I didn't know I was asking. He reaches into his pocket and produces a small box. Elena's breath catches. I know this world is complicated, Marco says. I know I can't promise you safety or simplicity, but I can promise you my whole heart, for whatever that's worth. I can promise to protect you and love you and be present for you every single day that I'm allowed to breathe. He opens the box. Inside is a ring, not ostentatious but elegant, a single diamond set in white gold. Elena Carter, will you marry me? She says yes before he finishes the question. The wedding takes place on a warm September afternoon in the garden of the Valenti mansion, beneath the oak tree that has witnessed so much of their story. The guest list is small, carefully curated. Rosa cries throughout the ceremony. Sophia serves as flower girl, taking her duties extremely seriously. Eleanor wears a simple ivory dress that Rosa helped her choose. Her hair is loose, the way Marco likes. Tight it. She carries a bouquet of wildflowers, gathered that morning from the garden. Marco waits for her at the makeshift altar, his expression a mixture of awe and gratitude. He is wearing a dark suit, impeccably tailored, but his tie is slightly crooked. Elena fixes it for him when she reaches his side. Nervous, she whispers. Terrified, he admits, but in the best possible way. The ceremony is brief and meaningful. They write their own vows, speaking words that are meant only for each other, words that capture the improbable journey that brought them together. When the officiant pronounces them married, Sophia cheers loudly enough to be heard 3 blocks away. The reception continues into the evening, with food and music and the kind of joy that comes from chosen family gathered in celebration. Elena dances with Marco, then with Sophia, then with Rosa, who turns out to be an unexpectedly skilled partner. As the night winds down, Elena finds herself standing alone at the edge of the garden looking up at the stars. Marco appears beside her, 2 glasses of champagne in hand. "Penny for your thoughts," he says, handing her a glass. Eleanor takes a sip. "I was thinking about how different my life is from what I expected. A year ago I was sleeping in motels and questioning every choice I'd ever made. Now I'm standing in my own garden, married to a man I love, with a daughter I adore, looking at stars I never knew existed." Marco wraps an arm around her waist. "Regrets?" "Not a single one." They stand together in comfortable silence, watching the darkness sparkle above them. Somewhere in the house, Sophia is convincing Rosa to let her have one more piece of cake. Somewhere in the city, the complicated machinery of Marco's business continues to turn. But here, in this moment, none of that matters. Elena leans her head against Marco's shoulder. "I love you," she says. "I love you too." He presses a kiss to her hair. "Always have, always will." The months that follow bring changes that feel organic rather than forced. Marco begins the process of legitimizing his operations, transitioning from shadow dealings to above-board investments. It is slow work, complicated by relationships built over decades, but Elena supports him through every challenge. She thrives in her teaching job, bringing the same passion and patience that made her successful before. Her students adore her. Her colleagues respect her. She volunteers for after-school programs and tutoring, initiatives pouring her energy into children who remind her of who she once was. Sophia grows taller, smarter, more confident. She excels in school and develops a passion for science that neither Eleanor nor Marco saw coming. They convert a spare room into a laboratory of sorts, filling it with microscopes and chemistry sets and books about everything from biology to astronomy. Elena discovers she is pregnant on a rainy November morning. She takes 3 tests before believing the results, then sits on the bathroom floor and cries for 20 minutes. When she finally tells Marco, his reaction is to burst into tears himself, then immediately call Rosa to begin preparing a nursery. The pregnancy is healthy and unremarkable, which Eleanor considers a blessing. She continues teaching until her 8th month, then reluctantly takes leave. Marco becomes excessively protective, hovering in ways that would be annoying if they weren't also adorable. Their son is born on a spring morning after 12 hours of labor that Elena later describes as the most difficult and rewarding experience of her life. They name him Alessandro, after Marco's father, and call him Alex for short. Sofia is immediately obsessed with her baby brother. She reads to him, sings to him, declares herself his official protector against all threats real and imagined. Elena watches her stepdaughter's devotion and feels her heart expand beyond what she thought possible. The mansion that once felt like a beautiful museum becomes a chaotic, joyful home. Toys appear in unexpected places. Laughter echoes in hallways that once knew only whispered secrets. The garden fills with climbing structures and sandboxes and the happy shrieks of children at play. Elena stands on the back porch one summer evening, watching Marco chase Sofia and Alex across the lawn. The sun is setting, painting everything in gold. Rosa is preparing dinner in the kitchen. The air smells of flowers and fresh-cut grass and home. She thinks about that rainy night 3 years ago. The alley, the despair, the complete certainty that her life was over. She was wrong. Her life was just beginning. Marco catches her eye across the garden and smiles. It is the smile of a man who has found something he never knew he was seeking. It is the smile of a man at peace. Elena smiles back. In the end, this is what matters. Not the darkness that preceded, not the complications that remain, but the love that has grown in the space between. A family, built not from obligation but from choice. A future shaped not by fear but by hope. Elena walked into Marco's world broken, and they rebuilt each other. Together, they have proven that even the most damaged hearts can learn to beat again. That safety can exist in the most unexpected places. That home is not a location but a person. That love, when given freely and received openly, has the power to transform everything it touches. The night deepens. The stars emerge. Somewhere in the city, life continues its endless motion. But here in this garden, in this family, in this moment, there is only peace. And they lived. Not happily ever after, because life does not work that way. They lived fully, honestly, gratefully. They faced challenges and celebrated victories and weathered storms together. They made mistakes and asked forgiveness and grew closer through the process. They lived in love, and love was enough. If you've watched this far, it's because you like this story. Leave a comment saying, "I've watched this far," so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. Your presence means everything to me. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you feel something real and true, then please hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story that reminds you what matters most. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing in the power of love to transform even the darkest chapters into new beginnings. Until next time.